What if the night you laughed off as a harmless joke became the evidence that destroyed your life? How could one touch, meant as a game, trigger a chain of events that left me publicly exposed, isolated, and forced to justify the secrets I thought I could control? This is the story of how my husband watched, waited, and then made sure everyone saw the truth I tried to hide. The moment Kellen's hand slid across my thigh under the table at Riverside Beastro, I should have pulled away. Instead, I laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear, including my husband Simon, whose 38th birthday we were supposedly celebrating. "Eve, what's so funny?" Simon asked, his voice carefully neutral as he cut into his steak. His dark eyes flicked between me and Kellen, who was sitting way too close on my left side. "Oh, nothing," I giggled, taking another sip of wine. "Kellen was just telling me about his dating disasters. You know how charming he can be." Kellen Drake flashed that devastating smile that had probably gotten him out of trouble his entire life. At 37, he was everything Simon wasn't: spontaneous, flirtatious, recently divorced, and living like he had nothing to lose. His hand was still on my leg, thumb tracing small circles through the fabric of my dress. "Come on, Eve," Kellen said, his voice low and playful. "Don't give away all my secrets." I could feel the tension radiating from Simon's mother, Helen, who sat directly across from us. Her lips were pressed into a thin line of disapproval, and she kept glancing between her son and me, like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. "Simon, dear," Helen said carefully, "didn't you mention wanting to try that new dessert menu?" But Simon wasn't looking at the menu. He was looking at me, really looking, with an expression I'd never seen before. Not angry, not hurt, just calculating, like he was filing away information for later use. "Actually, Mum, I think I'm good," he said quietly. "Eve seems to be having enough fun for both of us." The comment stung, but instead of backing down, I doubled down. Maybe it was the wine, maybe it was the way Simon had been emotionally distant for months, or maybe it was just the intoxicating feeling of being desired by someone who actually paid attention to me. "Don't be such a stick in the mud, honey," I said, placing my free hand on Simon's arm, while Kellen's remained possessively on my thigh. "It's your birthday. Live a little." Simon's father, Martin, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Perhaps we should—" "Actually," interrupted my sister Lauren from across the table, "I think Eve's right. Simon, you've been so serious lately. Remember when you used to be fun?" I shot Lauren a grateful look. At 33, she'd been through her own messy divorce and understood what it felt like to be taken for granted. She'd been encouraging me to find myself for months now. "Yeah, Simon," added Dina, my co-worker who'd somehow inserted herself into our family celebration. "Life's too short to be jealous over a little harmless flirting." But it wasn't harmless, and we all knew it. Kellen's messages had been getting more frequent and more intimate over the past few months. What started as casual texts about work had evolved into late-night conversations about our marriages, our dreams, our frustrations. I'd changed his contact name from Kellen to K-Fitness to avoid suspicion, though I told myself we were just friends. Just friends don't trace circles on each other's thighs at family dinners. "Simon's not jealous," piped up 7-year-old Laya, our daughter, who'd been quietly coloring at the end of the table. "He's just sad, I can tell." The table went silent, out of the mouths of babes. Simon reached over and squeezed Laya's hand. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired from work." But he wasn't fine, and I knew it. The problem was, I didn't care. For months, Simon had been buried in his software engineering projects, coming home late, distracted during conversations, treating me more like a roommate than a wife. When was the last time he'd touched me the way Kellen was touching me right now? When was the last time he'd made me feel beautiful, desired, alive? "You know what?" I announced, standing up abruptly and causing Kellen's hand to fall away. "Let's get a group photo. It's Simon's birthday after all." I flagged down our server, a young guy named Jake who'd been hovering nearby. Could you take a picture of our table? As we all squeezed together for the photo, Kellen positioned himself right behind me, his hands resting on my shoulders. I could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made my head spin. Simon stood stiffly next to us, his jaw clenched. "Say cheese," Jake called out, holding up someone's phone. "Cheese," we all chorused, though Simon's smile looked more like a grimace. After Jake handed the phone back, I noticed him fiddling with it for a moment longer than necessary. "Sorry," he said with a sheepish grin. "Accidentally started recording a video too. Hope that's okay." "No problem," I said quickly, though something in Simon's expression made my stomach flutter with unease. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of forced conversation and mounting tension. Kellen kept finding excuses to touch me, brushing my arm when he reached for the salt, placing his hand on my lower back when I stood to use the restroom. Each time, I felt a little thrill of rebellion, especially when I caught Simon watching. By the time we got home, the wine had worn off and reality was setting in. Simon went straight to his home office without a word, while I tucked Leia into bed. "Mummy," Leia said as I pulled her covers up, "why was Daddy's friend touching you so much?" My heart stopped. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "At dinner, he kept putting his hands on you. Daddy looked really sad about it." I forced a smile. "Uncle Kellen is just a very friendly person. Sometimes adults show friendship differently than kids do." But even as I said it, I knew how hollow it sounded. Leia might be 7, but she wasn't stupid. After she fell asleep, I found Simon in his office, staring at his computer screen. The room was dark except for the blue glow of the monitor. "Simon, are you coming to bed?" He didn't look up. "In a while." "Look, about tonight." "What about tonight, Eve?" His voice was eerily calm. "You mean the part where my friend had his hands all over my wife at my birthday dinner? Or the part where you seemed to enjoy it?" "It wasn't like that," I said, though we both knew it was exactly like that. "We were just having fun. You've been so distant lately, I thought." "You thought what? That humiliating me in front of my family would bring us closer together?" "I wasn't trying to humiliate you." But even as I protested, I knew there was some truth to his accusation. Part of me had wanted him to see what he was missing, to realize that other men still found me attractive even if he didn't seem to anymore. Simon finally turned to look at me, and what I saw in his eyes made me take a step back. Not anger, not hurt, something much more dangerous. Resolve. "Go to bed, Eve. We'll talk about this tomorrow." But as I lay awake that night, listening to Simon typing away in his office until the early hours of the morning, I had a sinking feeling that talking wasn't what he had in mind. The next morning, Simon was gone before I woke up. No note, no text, just an empty coffee mug in the sink and the lingering scent of his aftershave in the bathroom. It wasn't unusual. He often left early for work, but something felt different, colder. I was getting Leia ready for school when my phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "Girl, you were on fire last night. Simon needs to step up his game if he wants to keep you. That Kellen guy is hot." I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. In the harsh light of morning, last night's joke felt less like harmless fun and more like a massive mistake. But Lauren's enthusiasm was infectious, and part of me, the part that had felt invisible in my own marriage for months, preened at the validation. "It wasn't that serious," I typed back. "Just having a little fun. Simon's being dramatic about it. Men are so insecure. You're allowed to have male friends." But Kellen wasn't just a friend, and we both knew it. The messages between us had been escalating for weeks. Late-night conversations about our failing marriages, shared complaints about feeling unappreciated, increasingly flirtatious exchanges that I told myself were harmless. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed again. This time it was from K Fitness. "Last night was fun. Your husband looked like he wanted to murder me. Worth it, though." My pulse quickened. I glanced around the kitchen to make sure Laya wasn't watching before typing back. Simon's just being possessive. He'll get over it. Will he, though? You might want to be careful, Eve. Some guys don't handle that kind of thing well. The message sent a chill down my spine, but I pushed the feeling aside. Simon was many things: analytical, methodical, sometimes maddeningly logical, but he wasn't violent or vindictive. He'd sulk for a few days, maybe give me the silent treatment. Then we'd have one of our careful, polite conversations where we'd both pretend nothing had happened. At least, that's what I told myself. I dropped Leia off at school and headed to work, determined to put the whole thing behind me. But the universe had other plans. Eve, Dina practically pounced on me the moment I walked into our office building. I saw the video from last night. Girl, you are playing with fire. What video? My blood ran cold. The one Jake posted on his Instagram story. You know, that cute server from the restaurant. I follow him because he's friends with my cousin. She pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly. Here, look. The video was only about 10 seconds long, but it captured everything. Kellen's hands on my shoulders during the group photo, the way I leaned back into him, the intimate smile we shared when we thought no one was looking. And there, in the background, was Simon's face, a mask of barely controlled emotion that made my stomach drop. Oh God, I whispered. I know, right? Your husband looks like he's about to explode. But honestly, Eve, can you blame him? I mean, I'm all for a little harmless flirting, but that looked pretty intense. I grabbed Dina's phone, studying the video more closely. The timestamp showed it was posted at 11:47 p.m. last night, less than an hour after we'd gotten home, which meant it had been online while Simon was locked in his office, typing away on his computer. Can you send this to me? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Sure, but why? You were there. I just want to see how bad it looks. Dina raised an eyebrow but forwarded the video to my personal phone. As soon as I got to my desk, I opened Instagram and navigated to Jake's profile. The story was still up, with over 200 views already. My heart pounded as I screenshotted it, then immediately sent a message to Jake. Hi, this is Eve from last night's dinner. Could you please delete that video from your story? It was supposed to be a private family moment. He responded within minutes. Oh hey, sorry about that. I thought it was cute. Already deleted though. Someone else asked me to take it down earlier this morning. Someone else. Simon. I spent the rest of the morning in a fog, mechanically processing HR paperwork while my mind raced. How much did Simon know? Had he seen other things? Messages, maybe? I'd been careful to delete most of our conversations, but there were probably traces left behind. During my lunch break, I called Lauren. I think I'm in trouble, I said without preamble. What kind of trouble? I told her about the video, about Simon's strange behavior, about the growing certainty that my husband was planning something. Eve, you're being paranoid, Lauren said firmly. So what if there's a video? You didn't do anything wrong. You're allowed to have friends, allowed to have fun. Simon's just being controlling. But what if nothing? You need to stop letting him make you feel guilty for living your life. You've been miserable in that marriage for months. Maybe it's time to consider whether you'd be happier without him. The suggestion hung in the air like a loaded gun. Divorce. I'd thought about it, of course, especially during those long, lonely evenings when Simon was buried in work and I felt like a ghost in my own home. But thinking about it and actually doing it were two very different things. I can't, I said finally. There's Laya to consider, and financially. Eve, listen to me. You're 36 years old. You're beautiful, smart, successful. You deserve to be with someone who appreciates you, not someone who makes you feel guilty for being human. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at my phone. Lauren was right about one thing. I had been miserable. But was that Simon's fault? Or was I just looking for someone to blame for my own choices? My phone buzzed. Another message from Kellen. Heard through the grapevine that your husband wasn't too happy about last night. Everything okay? Everything's fine, I typed back quickly. Simon's just being Simon. If you need to talk, you know where to find me. I'm here for you, Eve. Always. The message was sweet, supportive, everything I'd been craving from my actual husband. Before I could stop myself, I was typing back, "Thank you, that means more than you know." Maybe we should cool it for a while, though, until things settle down. The suggestion should have relieved me, but instead, it made me panic. Kellen was my lifeline, the one person who made me feel valued and desired. The thought of losing that connection, especially now when my marriage felt more fragile than ever, was unbearable. "No," I typed. "I'm not going to let Simon's insecurity ruin our friendship. We haven't done anything wrong." It was a lie, and we both knew it, but it was a lie I needed to believe. When I got home that evening, Simon was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. Laia was doing homework beside him, chattering about her day at school. It was such a normal, domestic scene that for a moment I almost convinced myself I'd been overreacting. "Hi," I said carefully. "Hi." Simon didn't look up from his screen. "How was work?" "Fine." Laia glanced between us, sensing the tension. "Mummy, can you help me with my math homework?" "Of course, sweetheart." I slid into the chair across from Simon, hyper-aware of his presence. As I helped Laia work through her multiplication problems, I snuck glances at his laptop screen. He seemed to be working on some kind of spreadsheet, though I couldn't make out the details from my angle. After Laia finished her homework and went to watch TV, Simon and I were left alone in the kitchen. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "Simon," I began, "about last night." "I don't want to talk about last night," he said quietly, still not looking at me. "But we need to." "No, Eve, we don't." He finally raised his eyes to meet mine, and what I saw there made my blood run cold. "We need to talk about the last 3 months." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" Simon closed his laptop with deliberate precision. "I mean the late-night texting, the mysterious phone calls you take in the other room, the way you light up whenever Kellen's name comes up in conversation, the way you've been pulling away from me, from our family, from our marriage. I haven't... Don't." The single word cut through my protest like a knife. "Don't lie to me anymore, Eve. I know about the messages." The world tilted on its axis. He knew. Somehow, Simon knew about my conversations with Kellen, about the growing emotional intimacy that I'd convinced myself was innocent. "How?" I whispered. "Does it matter? The point is, I know. And last night wasn't a joke, was it? It was a test. You wanted to see how far you could push me, how much you could humiliate me in front of my own family." "That's not... It's exactly what it was." Simon stood up, towering over me. "And you know what, Eve? You succeeded. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool in front of my parents, my daughter, my friends. Congratulations." Tears sprang to my eyes. "Simon, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. Your actions spoke loud and clear." He picked up his laptop and headed toward his office. "I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight. We'll figure out the rest later." As I watched him walk away, I felt something fundamental shift between us. This wasn't just another fight that we could smooth over with time and careful politeness. This was the beginning of the end. But I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The next few days passed in a haze of forced normalcy and mounting dread. Simon maintained his cold, professional demeanor, speaking to me only when necessary and always in front of Leia. He slept in the guest room, left early for work, and spent his evenings locked in his office. I tried everything I could think of to break through the ice. I cooked his favorite meals, which he ate in silence. I attempted casual conversation, which he answered with monosyllables. I even bought tickets to a movie we'd talked about seeing, but he claimed he was too busy with work. "Give him time," Lauren advised, during one of our daily phone calls. Men need to process these things differently. He'll come around. But I wasn't so sure. There was something different about Simon's anger this time. Something calculated and patient that scared me more than shouting would have. Meanwhile, my relationship with Kellen was intensifying despite my attempts to be more careful. Our text conversations had moved to a messaging app that automatically deleted messages after 24 hours. We'd started meeting for coffee during lunch breaks, always at places far from both our offices. What had started as emotional support was evolving into something much more dangerous. "You deserve so much better than this," Kellen said during one of our clandestine meetings. We were sitting in a small cafe across town, our hands almost touching across the tiny table. "The way he's treating you, giving you the silent treatment like a child, it's emotional abuse." "It's not abuse," I protested weakly, though his words resonated with something deep inside me. "He's just hurt." "Eve, look at me." Kellen reached across the table and took my hand. "You're an amazing woman. You're intelligent, beautiful, caring. Any man would be lucky to have you. If Simon can't see that, it's his loss." The touch of his skin against mine sent electricity shooting up my arm. We'd been careful not to cross physical lines. No kissing, no intimate embraces. But the tension between us was becoming unbearable. "I should go," I said, but I made no move to pull my hand away. "Should and want are two different things," Kellen murmured, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. He was right. I should go home to my family, should try to repair my marriage, should stop playing with fire. But I wanted to stay here in this bubble where someone actually valued me, where I felt alive and desired instead of invisible and taken for granted. "Kellen," I started, but he shook his head. I know we can't. But God, Eve, if things were different." The unspoken possibilities hung between us like a promise and a threat. That evening, I came home to find Helen's car in our driveway. My mother-in-law was sitting at our kitchen table with Simon, both of them looking up when I walked in. "Eve," Helen said coolly, "we need to talk." My stomach dropped. "About what?" "About your behavior at the birthday dinner. About what you're doing to my son and granddaughter." I glanced at Simon, but his expression was unreadable. "Simon, could we have some privacy?" "No," he said quietly. "I asked Mom to come over. I want her to hear this." Helen leaned forward, her sharp eyes boring into mine. "I've known you for 8 years, Eve. I've watched you grow from a sweet young woman into a wife and mother. But what I saw at that restaurant—" She shook her head in disgust. "That wasn't the woman my son married." "It was just a joke," I said weakly. "You're all overreacting." "A joke?" Helen's voice rose. "Letting another man put his hands all over you while your husband and daughter watched. That's your idea of humor." "Mom, please keep your voice down," Simon said quietly. "Liar's upstairs." "You're right," Helen said, lowering her voice but not her intensity. "That little girl has already seen enough. Do you have any idea how confused she is right now, Eve? She asked me why Daddy's friend was touching Mommy like that. What am I supposed to tell her?" Guilt crashed over me like a wave. I'd been so focused on my own feelings, my own needs, that I'd barely considered how my actions might be affecting Laya. She was 7 years old enough to sense that something was wrong, but too young to understand what. "I never meant for Laya to be affected by this," I said, and for the first time, I meant it completely. "But she's affected," Simon said. "She's been having nightmares. She keeps asking me if Mommy and Daddy are going to get divorced like her friend Emma's parents did." The words hit me like a physical blow. "She said that?" "Last night, she crawled into my bed crying because she'd had a bad dream about our family breaking up." Simon's voice remained steady, but I could see the pain in his eyes. I had to lie to my 7-year-old daughter and tell her everything was fine when we both know it's not. Helen reached across the table and placed her hand on Simon's arm. "You don't have to protect her anymore, son. Eve made her choice when she decided to humiliate you in public." "I didn't mean to humiliate anyone," I protested. "I was just—" Just what? Helen snapped. Just trying to make my son jealous? Just trying to prove that other men still find you attractive? Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished. But at what cost? I looked between Simon and his mother, feeling ganged up on and defensive. You don't understand what it's been like for me. Simon's been distant for months. He barely talks to me, barely touches me. I felt invisible in my own marriage. So you decided to find attention elsewhere? Helen's voice dripped with disdain. Instead of talking to your husband like an adult, you chose to carry on with his friend. I'm not carrying on with anyone. The lie came out sharper than I intended. Simon's laugh was bitter. Really, Eve? Then explain the messages. My blood turned to ice. What messages? The ones you thought you deleted. The ones where you complain about our marriage. Where you tell Kellen how much you appreciate his friendship. Where you make plans to meet him for coffee. Simon pulled out his phone and began reading. Simon doesn't understand me the way you do. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd married someone who actually saw me. Ring any bells? I stared at him in horror. How did you... Cloud backup, he said simply. Amazing how technology works, isn't it? Helen looked between us with growing understanding. There's more to this than just that scene at the restaurant. Much more, Simon confirmed. 3 months of emotional infidelity. 3 months of my wife sharing our private business with another man. 3 months of being made to feel like I'm crazy for noticing that my wife was pulling away from our marriage. I felt the walls closing in around me. Simon, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've been having an emotional affair with my friend. That you've been meeting him behind my back. That you've been complaining about our marriage to anyone who'll listen instead of talking to me. It's not an affair, I shouted, then immediately lowered my voice, remembering Laya upstairs. We're just friends. We haven't. Haven't what? Haven't kissed? Haven't slept together? Simon's voice was deadly quiet. Is that supposed to make me feel better? That my wife is only emotionally cheating on me? Helen stood up abruptly. I think I should go. This is between you two now. She paused at the door, looking back at me with something that might have been pity. Eve, I hope you figure out what you really want before you destroy everything good in your life. That little girl upstairs deserves better than this. After Helen left, Simon and I sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of everything that had been said hung between us like a toxic cloud. What happens now? I asked finally. Simon looked at me with tired eyes. I don't know, Eve. I honestly don't know. But as he gathered his phone and laptop and headed back to his office, I had the sinking feeling that he knew exactly what happened next. And whatever it was, I wasn't going to like it. 2 weeks later, I was sitting at my desk at work when Dina rushed over with barely contained excitement. Eve, there's a man in the lobby asking for you. He's got some kind of official-looking envelope. My blood ran cold. What kind of man? I don't know, but he's wearing a suit and he looks serious. He said something about needing to serve you with documents. The world tilted on its axis. Documents. Official documents. My legs felt like jelly as I made my way to the lobby, aware that half the office was probably watching through the glass walls. The man was exactly as Dinah had described. Middle-aged, professional, holding a manila envelope like it contained explosives. Which, in a way, it probably did. Ivanthy Merrow? He asked. Yes, I whispered. You've been served. He handed me the envelope and a clipboard. I need you to sign here acknowledging receipt. My hands shook as I signed my name. The man nodded, made a note on his own paperwork, and left without another word. I stood there in the lobby, holding the envelope like it might bite me, while my co-workers pretended not to stare. I couldn't open it there. Not in public. Not where everyone could see whatever bomb Simon had just dropped on my life. I mumbled something to Dina about feeling sick and drove home in a daze, the envelope sitting on the passenger seat like a coiled snake. At home, I sat at the kitchen table and opened it with trembling fingers. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The words swam before my eyes. Below that, in smaller print, petitioner, Simon James Merrow. Respondent, Ivanthe Eve Merrow. But it was the cover letter from Simon's attorney that made my knees buckle. Dear Miss Merrow, please find enclosed your husband's petition for dissolution of marriage. As you will see, Mr. Merrow is seeking full custody of the minor child, citing evidence of adultery and behavior detrimental to the child's welfare. Attached, you will find a partial list of exhibits that will be presented in court. Exhibit A, video evidence from birthday dinner, March 15th. Exhibit B, text message logs between respondent and Kellen Drake, January-March. Exhibit C, call logs showing frequent contact with Mr. Drake. Exhibit D, bank records showing unexplained charges at restaurants and hotels. Exhibit E, witness statements from family members. Exhibit F, social media evidence. Exhibit G, email correspondence. Exhibit H, location data from respondent's phone. Exhibits IN, additional evidence to be disclosed during discovery. Please be advised that preservation orders have been issued for all electronic devices, social media accounts, and communication records. Any attempt to delete or destroy evidence will be considered spoliation and may result in sanctions. We strongly advise you to retain counsel immediately. Sincerely, Margaret Thornton, Esquires Thornton and Associates. I read the letter 3 times before the full implication sank in. Simon hadn't just filed for divorce, he'd built a case. A methodical, comprehensive case designed to destroy me in court. Full custody. He was trying to take Laya away from me. My phone rang. Lauren. Eve, what the hell is going on? Simon just called me asking if I'd be willing to testify about your emotional state over the past few months. What does that mean? He's divorcing me, I said numbly, and he's trying to take Laya. What? He can't do that. You're her mother. He has evidence, Lauren. Somehow he has everything. Messages, phone records, even video from that stupid dinner. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, how much evidence? Enough. I started crying then, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. He's been planning this for weeks, maybe months. While I thought he was just sulking, he was building a case against me. Okay, calm down. We'll figure this out. You need to call a lawyer right now, and Eve, you need to call Kellen and warn him. If Simon's attorney has your messages, they probably have his too. After Lauren hung up, I tried calling Kellen, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried texting, but the messages wouldn't deliver. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Then I remembered the preservation orders. If Simon's attorney had contacted Kellen's lawyer, he'd probably been advised to cut off all communication with me immediately. I was truly alone. The front door opened and Simon walked in, earlier than usual. He looked at me sitting at the kitchen table, with the legal documents spread out in front of me, my face streaked with tears, and something that might have been regret flickered across his features. Where's Leia? He asked quietly. After-school program. She won't be home for an hour. He nodded and sat down across from me. For a moment, we just looked at each other. 2 people who'd once loved each other enough to build a life together, now sitting on opposite sides of a legal battlefield. Why? I asked finally. Why are you trying to take her away from me? I'm not trying to take her away from you, Eve. I'm trying to protect her from the chaos you've created. I never meant for any of this to affect her. But it has affected her. She's been having nightmares, acting out at school, asking questions no 7-year-old should have to ask. And it's only going to get worse if we don't handle this properly. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. What do you want from me? Simon was quiet for a long moment. I want you to get help. I want you to figure out what you really want from life. And I want you to do it without dragging our daughter through the mud. And if I don't, his expression hardened, then we'll let the court decide what's best for Laya. And Eve, I have a very good attorney. That night, after Laya was asleep, I called every divorce attorney in town. Most were either too expensive or already booked up. The one I could afford, seem more interested in settling quickly than fighting for my rights. "Look, Mrs. Merrow," he said, during our phone consultation, "your husband has a strong case. The video evidence alone is damaging, but combined with the electronic communications and witness statements, you might want to consider negotiating rather than fighting." "Negotiating what? He wants full custody." "He wants primary custody with supervised visitation for you. Given the evidence he has, that might be the best outcome you can hope for." Supervised visitation with my own daughter. After I hung up, I sat in the dark living room, staring at the family photos on the mantel. Pictures of happier times, our wedding day, Lia's first steps, family vacations where we all looked genuinely happy. When had it all gone so wrong? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Eve, it's Kellen. Had to get a new phone. My lawyer says I can't talk to you, but I wanted you to know I'm sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. Take care of yourself." And just like that, he was gone. The man who'd made me feel alive and desired, who'd promised to always be there for me, had disappeared the moment things got difficult. I was well and truly alone. But as I sat there in the darkness, I realized something else. Simon wasn't just punishing me for my betrayal. He was showing me exactly what I'd thrown away. A man who kept his promises. A man who protected his family. A man who, even in his anger, was trying to do what was best for our daughter. I'd gambled everything on a fantasy and lost. The only question now was whether there was anything left to salvage from the wreckage. The deposition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at Thornton & Associates' downtown office. I sat in the glass-walled conference room, flanked by my attorney, a tired-looking man named Robert Chen, who I was paying by the hour to essentially watch me lose custody of my daughter. Across the table sat Simon with his attorney, Margaret Thornton, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who looked like she'd built her career on destroying people like me. Between us lay a stack of documents that represented the complete destruction of my privacy and my marriage. "Let's begin," Mrs. Thornton said, adjusting her glasses. "Mrs. Merrow, I want to direct your attention to Exhibit B, the text message logs between you and Mr. Kellen Drake from January through March of this year." She slid a thick folder across the table. I opened it with trembling hands and felt my stomach drop. Every message was there. Every complaint about Simon, every flirtatious exchange, every moment of growing intimacy that I'd convinced myself was innocent. "Do you recognize these messages?" Ms. Thornton asked. "Yes," I whispered. "And is it your testimony that these represent a purely platonic friendship?" I glanced at my attorney, who nodded slightly. We'd gone over this. Deny everything, minimize the rest. Yes, Kellen and I were just friends. Ms. Thornton smiled, the kind of smile a shark might give before biting. "I see. Let me read you a few excerpts. January 23rd, you wrote, 'I keep thinking about what you said at lunch. You're right. I deserve better than this.' Mr. Drake replied, 'You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are, someone who makes you feel alive.' Your response, 'You make me feel alive.' Heat flooded my cheeks. That was taken out of context. What context would make that appropriate for a married woman to say to a man who isn't her husband? I had no answer. Ms. Thornton continued reading. February 14th, Valentine's Day. You wrote, 'Simon forgot. Again. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd made different choices.' Mr. Drake replied, 'It's not too late to make different choices, Eve. You know how I feel about you.' Your response, 'I know. And that scares me because I'm starting to feel the same way.' That's enough," my attorney interjected weakly. "Oh, but we're just getting started," Ms. Thornton said. "March 10th, 5 days before the birthday dinner incident. I can't stop thinking about yesterday. The way you looked at me, the way you touched my hand. Simon hasn't made me feel that way in years, Mr. Drake. That's because Simon doesn't appreciate what he has. I would never take you for granted." Your response, "Sometimes I wish I'd met you first." I wanted to disappear into the floor. Seeing my private thoughts laid out like evidence in a criminal trial was more humiliating than I could have imagined. Mrs. Merrow, Ms. Thornton continued, you also exchanged over 300 text messages with Mr. Drake during work hours alone. Is it your testimony that your employer was paying you to conduct this friendship? I sometimes texted during breaks. 300 messages during breaks. That's quite a lot of break time. She was right, and we both knew it. I'd been distracted at work, constantly checking my phone, counting the minutes until I could talk to Kellen again. It was obsessive behavior, and there was no way to spin it as innocent. Let's move on to the restaurant meetings, Ms. Thornton said, pulling out another folder. Bank records show that between January and March, you made 17 separate charges at restaurants during lunch hours. Restaurants that are nowhere near your office, but quite close to Mr. Drake's workplace. Can you explain these charges? I was having lunch. With Mr. Drake. Sometimes. 17 times in 2 months. That's more than twice a week. Would you characterize this as normal behavior for a married woman? My attorney finally spoke up. Objection. My client is entitled to have lunch wherever she chooses. Sustained, said the court reporter automatically, though this wasn't a courtroom. Ms. Thornton smiled again. Let's talk about the birthday dinner, shall we? We have video evidence of the incident in question. She pulled out a tablet and played the video. Watching it from this perspective, as evidence rather than a moment of rebellion, was nauseating. I could see exactly what everyone else had seen. A married woman allowing another man to touch her intimately while her husband and child watched. Can you explain your behavior in this video? It was just a joke, I said weakly. A joke? Your daughter was present, Mrs. Merrow. Your 7-year-old daughter witnessed this joke. How do you think that affected her? I thought about Lia's nightmares, her questions about divorce, the way she'd been clinging to Simon lately. I didn't think, no, you didn't think. You didn't think about your daughter, your husband, or your family. You only thought about yourself and the attention you were getting from Mr. Drake. Ms. Thornton leaned forward. Mrs. Merrow, after this incident, did you attempt to contact the person who posted the video online? My blood ran cold. Yes, I asked him to take it down. Because you were embarrassed by your behavior? Because it was private. But someone else had already contacted him first, hadn't they? Your husband had already seen the video and asked for the original file with metadata. Isn't that correct? I nodded miserably. And what did you do after you realized your husband had seen the video? I tried to explain. You tried to delete evidence. You deleted text message threads, changed contact names in your phone, and attempted to erase your digital footprint. Isn't that correct? I was trying to protect my privacy. You were trying to destroy evidence of your affair. It wasn't an affair. Ms. Thornton's smile was triumphant. Mrs. Merrow, would you be comfortable with your husband having the same type of friendship with another woman that you had with Mr. Drake? The question hit me like a physical blow. Would I be comfortable with Simon texting another woman 300 times during work hours? Meeting her for secret lunches? Telling her she made him feel alive? Letting her touch him intimately at family gatherings? I started, then stopped, because the answer was no. Absolutely not. And if that behavior would be unacceptable from Simon, then it had been unacceptable from me. No further questions, Ms. Thornton said, sitting back with satisfaction. My attorney tried to salvage something during his questioning, but there wasn't much to work with. The evidence was overwhelming, and my explanation sounded hollow even to me. After the deposition, Simon and I found ourselves alone in the hallway, while our attorneys discussed scheduling. I'm sorry, I said quietly, for all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know. Simon looked at me with tired eyes. Why, Eve? Why wasn't our marriage enough? Why wasn't I enough? It was the question I'd been dreading, because I didn't have a good answer. I felt invisible, I said finally, like you didn't see me anymore, like I was just there. So instead of talking to me about it, you found someone who would see you. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. It just evolved. And the dinner, making me look like a fool in front of my family. I closed my eyes, remembering that night. I wanted you to notice me, to fight for me, to show that you cared enough to be jealous. Well, congratulations, you got my attention. We stood there in silence for a moment, two people who'd once promised to love each other forever, now facing off across a legal battlefield of our own making. What happens now? I asked. Now we wait for the judge to decide what's best for Laya, Simon said. And Eve, for her sake, I hope you get the help you need. As I watched him walk away, I realized that I'd been asking the wrong question all along. It wasn't what happens now. It was what happens next. And for the first time in months, I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing for certain. The woman who had let Kellen Drake touch her at that birthday dinner was gone forever. Whether the woman who replaced her would be better or worse remained to be seen. 6 months after the gavel fell, I sat in a small conference room at the Family Services Center, waiting for my supervised visit. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A grey-haired monitor named Ms. Carter reviewed the rules one more time. No discussing the case, no negative comments about Simon, no physical affection beyond brief hugs at start and end. Laya walked in holding Simon's hand, her backpack bouncing. She looked taller, her dark curls longer. When she saw me, her face lit up, then dimmed with the careful caution she'd learned too young. "Mommy!" She ran forward, arms out. I knelt, hugging her tightly until Ms. Carter cleared her throat. We colored pictures, played board games, talked about school. Laya showed me a drawing of our old house, 3 stick figures holding hands. "I miss when we all lived together," she said softly. My throat closed. "I miss it too, sweetheart. Every day." Simon waited in the hallway afterward. He didn't gloat. He never had. "She talks about you constantly," he said. "She's proud of your progress reports." I nodded, tears stinging. "Thank you for letting her keep loving me." He looked at me. Really looked. "She never stopped. Just don't stop showing up." I left with Laya's latest drawing folded in my purse, another small victory. Therapy was hard. Parenting classes were humbling. Paying Simon back $47,000 hurt every month. But each supervised hour, each honest conversation, each time Laya smiled without hesitation, rebuilt something I'd almost lost forever. Redemption wasn't dramatic. It was showing up, week after week, proving with actions, not apologies, that I could put her first. The punchline still stung, but the joke was long over. What remained was the quiet, steady work of becoming someone worthy of the trust I'd broken. And for the first time, I believed I might actually get there. Word count, 100.